But I love the fact that I get to make people happy as well. That's sort of what started me with it when I was a little kid. I still love that I can cook for people and, and stay in their memory, sometimes forever.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Negating adversity has been a common theme since the very beginning of Deep in the Weeds when COVID rocked our world. What we soon discovered is that the show became an outlet to share all manner of life's challenges and its triumphs too. Sharing stories that make us think, make us better, and through that connection allow us to maybe take a new path for ourselves too. Today I'm joined by someone who continues to inspire so many to take on life's challenges front on. Matt Golinski, how are you?
Hey Huck, how you going?
I'm good. It's great to get you on the show. It sounds like you're in the country somewhere.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. Yes, I certainly am. I'm sitting in the middle of my 14 acres, looking out over all the fruit trees at the moment. It's looking pretty nice. I'm expecting some rain hopefully in the next couple of days. So, it's pretty special. Very nice.
You're a well-known chef in Australia, integral to Queensland's hospitality scene, but also on the telly as well. What's things like for you now? It sounds like, are you sort of dipping your hand in the soil as well?
Yeah, pretty much. Something that, I kind of grew up with. I grew up on a farm on the Sunshine Coast. And so this is something I've always wanted to kind of get back to. And when this place came up, it was kind of just the perfect timing. I've got two little girls now, so I've got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I really wanted them to have the same sort of childhood as what I had, swinging from a mango tree and, running around and getting dirty. So to me, it's, and really from a chef's point of view, it's an absolute paradise. I've just got so many different things that I get to play with now, and I'm learning all the time. It's just every day is a learning experience.
Give us a sense of the sort of region and environment. What's working and growing, on your property there?
Well, it's the thing that sold this place to us was the in the advertising was a hand-drawn map of the entire property in pencil with all numbers all over it, and then another list of all the different 120 different fruit trees. So when I first moved here, it was kind of mind-boggling to go, I'm never going to learn all these trees, but now I know. We've got avocados. We've got about 10 different varieties of avocados. We've got mangoes galore at the moment, but we've got things like all the tropicals, so black sapotes. We've got 3 big jackfruit trees. We've got every type of citrus you can imagine. We've got dragon fruits, things like Brazilian cherries. So yeah, there's always the hardest and most heartbreaking part of it is not being able to keep up with picking it all, and you've just kind of sometimes got to accept the fact that you're going to lose some stuff. And I've gotten into lately just, trying to freeze down stuff. So Brazilian cherries, I'm picking about 2 kilos a day and just putting them straight in the freezer, so that when I decide to do something with them, I can just go pull them out and go, yep, cool, I'm going to make a sauce out of those or whatever. So it's pretty cool. It's a fun adventure.
Your career has always been about fresh and seasonal and local ingredients, but has this sort of foray into growing fruit and vegetables, has it changed sort of your approach to food and cooking?
Yeah, look, I think probably that's always been my thing, really, is having grown up with farming, was that, you use what's available to you at the time, and that's going to be food at its best. But now it's the challenge to work out what, at the moment we've got mango trees, and so I've got green mangoes that I can use for green mango salads all the time, but then picking mangoes as we need them and letting them ripen up. So it's about that balancing everything, but it's pretty amazing to just watch these trees change through the year. We've been here 18 months now, so I've seen a full season here. And last year there was no mangoes. There was too much rain at the wrong time, and so the flowers all set, but then they all rotted out. So we had 0 mangoes last year, but this year we've got truckloads of them. So the lesson that I've learned about being here is that you don't assume that you're going to be eating anything until you're actually eating it, because there's a pretty good chance that either hail or bats or birds or any type of force majeure or pestilence could come at any moment and destroy, the thing that you've been watching grow for months. So, but we do pretty well. We eat a lot of stuff off here, and that's pretty special.
Watching from afar, you seem like you're incredibly busy taking on all sorts of projects. What are you doing at the moment and sort of for this year?
Yeah, look, I spent 5 years at Peppers in Noosa as the consultant chef for there, and that was awesome. But when I moved out here, I kind of decided it was time to change focus a little bit and just, pick and choose a little bit of the things I want to do through the year, the things that I enjoy doing. So for me, and really since what happened to me 12 years ago, it's really just been a case of people calling me and going, "Hey Matt, do you want to do this?" And I go, "Oh yeah, that sounds good, I'll do that." And then that kind of, it's self-perpetuating. People hear about, "Oh, Matt did such and such, oh, let's get him to do this." And so that's been my work really for the last 12 years. And this year's just it's I was thinking at the beginning of this year, oh gee, no one's calling me, maybe I'm going to have a quiet year. And then everyone gets back to work after those first 2 weeks, and now I'm just sitting in front of a computer emailing people back saying, "No, sorry, that date's already taken," or "Yes, I can do your festival," or whatever it happens to be. So, but I get to, one of the good things is I get to travel a lot to lots of regional areas, particularly in Queensland, where I get to meet lots of farmers, and I get to go to farms and see how things are done. And I find, and that's been the case of being here as well, is just understanding how things grow sort of turns you into a better chef, I suppose. You understand how things work, almost like understanding the anatomy of a fruit or a vegetable or a cow or a chicken or an egg or whatever, makes you better equipped to use it better, and respect it and appreciate it more, I suppose, too.
Well, I want to explore sort of what you're doing in detail a bit later on, but you mentioned about growing up on a farm. Take us back to then. Do you have any stories of what life was like then for you?
Well, yeah, I grew up on it was predominantly, tropical, so pawpaws, bananas, avocados, but the same as what I've got here. We had things like custard apple trees and mango trees and 200 macadamia trees and that sort of thing. So I spent a lot of my childhood swinging from a mango tree in a tire swing and just climbing to wherever the good mangoes were, peeling them with my hands and taking a bite and chucking them and getting the next one. So, and here we've got, I always had my favourite macadamia trees that I had rocks under, 2 rocks. So you always you go to the good macadamia trees and have rocks to crack them open with. And now I've got macadamia trees here that my daughters go to, and they sit under them and crack the macadamias themselves. So it's come full circle. But I grew up in Palmwoods, which is probably half an hour from where I am here, and I think it was that influence of understanding what good produce was that was the catalyst for me deciding really early on that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a chef, and I didn't ever want to be anything else. So, from about the age of 8, I said to Mum and Dad, "Yeah, I'm going to be a chef." And then I just couldn't wait to get to high school so that I could do cooking. And then the first 6 months of grade 8 was sewing, which really, really, really cut me hard. But and then after that, once I got to grade 9, it's like, woohoo, I get to cook now. And I just, I was so sure of that was what I was going to be, that I learned French for 5 years. I did biology. I don't know how I thought that was going to help. I did art, but I chose every subject that was going to help me in any way become a chef. So,
at that young age at home, do you remember anything that you tried to cook where you had a triumph or a failure?
Yeah, look, probably one of the funniest stories was I loved making sweets. So I loved, and I loved baking. I used to go and harass the local baker, because I was so interested in baking bread. I just loved the science of it, but I loved making things like marshmallows and, sweet, like lollies and things like that. So I'd make Turkish delight and marshmallow and stuff like that. And, I remember for my 13th birthday that, I'd said to mum and dad, all I want is this cordless electric beater that's like a Breville or something like that. And I'm not really sure why I wanted it to be cordless, but to be honest, because I could have just plugged it into the wall and it would have been heaps better. And the problem is when you make marshmallow, you need a fair bit of power in those beaters. So my I was stoked. I got these beaters for my birthday, for 13th birthday. Got these Breville beaters, and then halfway through making marshmallows, I ran out of batteries, and then I realized, the disappointment kicked in that maybe I should have asked for one with a cord. Um, but look, that's the sort of, I guess that's the sort of childhood that I had. Was I was really interested in that from an early age of just, cooking anything, learning to cook anything I possibly could. But from a reasonably early age, I was making, family dinners at night. Mum and Dad had come in from the farm, and I'd made lasagna or whatever. I just love doing it.
In the early years, when you sort of got your foot in the door, what were the really important venues and people that helped shape you at a young age?
Wow. Probably, I as soon as I finished school, I moved to Brisbane basically, and got an apprenticeship down there. And I was a little hippie kid, I was like, dreadies, and I was a vegetarian. So I wrote a letter to the only vegetarian restaurant in Brisbane at the time, Squirrels in West End, and asked them, please, 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 can I have a job? And they gave me one. And so that was kind of my starting point. And that was, to me, that was a really good influence on me because, and I eventually, I kind of gave up on that. I went to my first block of college and realised that all these other kids knew how to cook meat and I didn't. And I, becoming a chef to me was more important than having any sort of morals. So I gave up the vegetarian thing and and started eating meat and moved to a meat restaurant. But that first 18 months or so that I spent at Squirrels, learning vegetarian stuff, and it was way ahead of its time at the time. It was doing vegan stuff when that and gluten-free stuff when that didn't really exist anywhere else. But that was a really good starting point for me to realise that that's the base, that the probably the most important part of the cooking process is understanding vegetables. Anyone can cook a steak really, but understanding how to combine. And I was lucky enough in that place that I was working with really good Indian chefs and things like that, and they taught me how to mix spices. That was huge. Understanding how all the different different spices and how much to use of each one when you're putting together a curry blend or something like that has stayed with me forever. That was really, a really influential part of my starting of my career.
As you sort of got into the belly of the beast of your career and started to have some influence, tell us about sort of some of the key venues that sort of really changed and allowed you to blossom as a chef.
Yeah, I guess probably the big one for me was when I came back from overseas and I started working at Ricky Ricardo's in Noosa. And I worked there just as a chef for about 12 months. And then the head chef left and they said to me, Matt, do you want to be the head chef? And I went, okay, cool, I'll do that. And then I was there for about 6 years as the head chef. And that was just an amazing place. That was where that real love and that access to local producers came from, where we would have the duck guy would just come in the back door and drop the ducks off, or the fish guy would, had just caught the fish or whatever. And that was back in those days when, when people, when that sort of stuff happens. It happens so much now in Noosa though, where we do have this great network of producers close by that will do the rounds with their tomatoes or their strawberries or whatever, twice a week to all the restaurants. But that to me was the starting point, and I had this amazing audience there that would just eat whatever I wanted to make. So I could, buy anything, and I got to experiment. I got to practice and learn so much there. And it was so that was probably that turning point for me where I was like, oh wow, here I am in Noosa. People come here to eat. They want a food experience, and I get to do that. That was really, really a special time of life.
Tell us a bit about your cooking then. Is there any sort of dishes that you remember from that period of time that sort of exemplified where you were at?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know. I think probably to me, I was reading a lot about. I've always loved Middle Eastern food, and that's been a huge influence on me. So I was able to really, because Ricky's was basically the brief was, it's a Mediterranean restaurant, but it's sort of Mediterranean rim. So you could do anything from, Moroccan to Italian to Greek, Turkish, whatever. It had, there was no lemongrass, so I was, I just focused just on that. But a big part of what I cooked there was a lot of that real Turkish, Lebanese, that sort of stuff. And so all those flavors were, I love all that sort of stuff. I spent a fair bit of time in Turkey when I was a young backpacker, and that was a huge influence on the way I saw food, the way I looked at ingredients as the hero, and saw what an apricot was really supposed to be like, or a tomato or a white mulberry or that sort of stuff where you just like you eat them and you're just like you don't need anything else. This is just perfection. So I guess that was a big part of it, was like me honing those skills, learning as much as I possibly could. I just read like crazy. I had an office just full of books, and I'd just read and practice and learn as much as I could. So, I think no one particular dish comes to mind at the moment. That's a long time ago. I can't even remember what I did yesterday.
A long time ago, back when before there was chefs everywhere on television, you were part of Ready Steady Cook with the likes of Jared Ingersoll and Alistair McLeod. And how did that gig come about?
Yeah, it was a completely random situation where, Channel 10 had bought this show from overseas, the rights to make this show, and they were just cold calling chefs all over the country. And they wanted to have a show where they had chefs from Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane, so that, that people could identify with them, I suppose, if they lived in Brisbane. That's our Brisbane chef. And somebody on the original crew said, we should get someone from Noosa. That Noosa's a real foodie place, and so they rang someone in the media and said, well, who should we contact? And they went, I think Matt would be good. And so they just randomly called me and said, we're making this show. You get 5 ingredients. You got 20 minutes to do 4 dishes. Do you want to do it? Do you want to come for the audition? And originally I said, no, I don't want to do that. Thanks. That sounds pretty scary. And then I got conned into doing the audition in Brisbane, and they basically, they did exactly that. They said, we were in the Black Pearl Epicure kitchen in Brisbane in the Valley, and in their sort of demo kitchen, and they basically brought a producer, a camera person, and 5 ingredients, and said, here you go, you've got 20 minutes to make 4 dishes, go. And they talked to you the whole time just to see if you could cook and talk at the same time. And then that was the audition process. And then a week later they rang me and said, yep, you're in, you're one of the 12. And I was like, oh shit, I've actually got to do this now. And it was scary for the first few times of doing the show, but once we got used to it, we were all new at it. None of us were, savvy at that really. So it was, we were all in the same boat, scared and nervous, but we all became such close friends through that as well. We were all still close, and we love seeing each other still. So we created a real family during those years. It was pretty special.
Did you have any stories of, one of the episodes that you recorded that you remember?
Oh, yeah, I do. I remember being up against Manu, and Manu, if you were up against Manu, then you were going to lose, right? Generally, 90% of the time. All you had to do was bang on that French accent, and all the girls in the audience would swoon. And so... And, but winning the show was not really that important. But, when you got absolutely annihilated with, 99% of them were tomatoes and you were a capsicum, it hurt a little bit. And so, I was up against Manu this time, and I sort of thought, oh, God, here we go. And my contestant came out of the audience, and Manu always got kind of duck and things like that, French stuff. They always sort of seem to look after him with the French type stuff. And then I my contestant came down and they were a vegan. So I had tofu and pumpkin. And I thought, oh, that's it. I'm going to lose this. I'm not even going to try. So I came up with sort of 4 dishes that, I roughly knew how I was going to actually achieve them. And then just before we started, they said, okay, there's a twist to this show. They'd come up with twists every now and then. They'd change things around, take away your main ingredient or whatever. And they said, oh, there's a twist to this show. You guys are going to swap sides and cook each other's food. And so Manu had to come over and cook tofu and pumpkin. And I think he still hasn't forgiven me for that.
A little earlier, you mentioned, the unfathomable tragedy that happened 12 years ago. Take us back to that time and tell us a bit about what happened.
Yeah, look, I was running my own catering business in Noosa. It was 2011, the end of that, and it was Christmas Day, and we'd all gone to bed, and I woke up, 2 months later in hospital after being in an induced coma, to find that all my family was gone and my house and everything I owned, and and then I spent another 2 months in hospital, getting skin grafts and that sort of thing from burns. So, and then another 12 months after that in rehab. And so, that was a really, it is unfathomable. I still think about it now and just go, I'm not sure how I managed to get through it. I mean, I put a lot of it, the fact that I'm still here, down to the amount of amazing friends and people all over the country who helped me, want to stay alive. And a huge amount of that was hospitality people. There's so many stories of, anyone who I'd ever had contact with in the hospitality industry seemed to get together and have some sort of fundraiser for me. And it was, it wasn't just, the chefs, it was producers and suppliers, and everyone was just throwing in and wanting to get behind me, and to have that was pretty special. To know that I was loved and I was cared about, and people wanted me to get through this. That was the really moment that I went, oh, well, I better not let them down. I better get on with this and get through it. And yeah, it really was. It was amazing. I'm so proud to be in an industry where when somebody needs you, that everyone gathers around and looks after you. That was amazing.
To think where you are now and so influential with back cooking again. Well, take us through that little journey of the last sort of decade or so. When did you sort of get back in the kitchen and feel comfortable and sort of find yourself again in that sense?
Yeah, I don't really know. It really has been pretty organic, the way that life has gone over the last 10 years, where it's just sort of flowed from one thing to the next. And some things I kind of did this sort of blanket saying yes to everything, and now I've pulled that back a little bit. But by throwing myself into all sorts of different opportunities, I guess I've learned a lot. But yeah, I sort of was asked to do things like be the food ambassador for the Gympie region, and that gave me an opportunity I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and that was really just me going out and supporting and promoting all the producers of that region. And now most of them are good friends of mine. I just had a couple, from out at Waluga around for lunch on Sunday for a barbecue, and they're the people that grow my, okra and rosellas and gooseberries and tomatillos and things like that. And so those, there's so many of those people who have become not much more than suppliers or producers. They're friends of mine. And so yeah, I'm pretty lucky to have had all those different experiences that have sort of brought me to this point now. Here I am on my place, my farm with, with all this food around me, and I can, I can pick and choose what I want to do, what makes me happy, and have a bit more lifestyle as well. I don't want to throw myself into 80-hour-a-week job and miss my kids' childhoods. I'd rather be a dad than be than be cooking all the time. So yeah, it's good how it has come around to this point, I suppose.
Every human experiences adversity at some stage in their life, not necessarily as extreme as what you experienced. But what sort of advice do you have for people to sort of pull through adversity and sort of carve a new path and move forward?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I'm pretty philosophical about all this sort of stuff, I think probably, I mean, it kind of all situations are completely different, I suppose, but I like to try and sort of keep things in perspective. If things aren't going right for you, and I do this to myself, having a whinge about, the internet not working properly or whatever, and then I think about, well, I could be living in Syria or Gaza, or so keep things in perspective. You can drive yourself crazy by thinking how bad your life is, but often it's not as bad as you work it up to in your head. I like to try. I've always been a pretty positive person, so I like to try and keep the being optimistic about things rather than pessimistic sort of thing. So.
You mentioned that you thought that the phones were a bit quiet at the beginning of the year, but now they're ringing all the time. What do you see yourself sort of doing? I know you settled on the farm, but the next sort of couple of years, what would you like to sink your teeth into?
Well, it's funny because in June this year I was kind of at a bit of a loose end, and I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll become a chef cliche and buy myself a food van. And so that's what I've done. I bought myself a food van. I've just got it the other day. I'm waiting on council approval now. But that's another little thing that I've already got a pretty full calendar. But for the spaces that I've got in the year, I thought it'd be really good to be able to just go, okay, I've got loads of whatever on here. I'm going to come up with one dish. I'm going to do 300 or 400 serves of it. And I'm going to go and do the local market or whatever it is, and just make it that this is a one-off. This is a one-off dish I'm doing for today. Who wants one? I've got heaps of avocados, or I've got loads of mangoes, or I've got whatever, and just do that and make it a special thing where, 12 times a year maybe it might be, that I take the van out and just go, here's a dish that uses all the different producers from the region. It might be 8 different people involved in one dish, and just tell that story, and I don't have to worry about having staff or a premises or anything like that. It's just a van that I tow to wherever I'm going. So it's kind of cool. It's I've yet to make it work. It might be a complete failure, but I'm, going to give it a crack anyway. So yeah, that's one of the things. There's always opportunities out there, and I love doing the the kind of the event circuit, I suppose it is, where we've got Noosa Eat Drink Festival here. We've got the Curated Plate, which is the Sunshine Coast Food Festival. I'm involved in both of those. I'm doing the Moreton Bay Food Festival this year. I drive to St. Lawrence every year and do the wetlands weekend up there between Rockhampton and Mackay. So there's all those sorts of things where everywhere that I go, all these different regional areas, whether it's Longreach or Blackall or wherever, I've got, almost feels like I've got families there that I go and visit every year, because I know all these people, and I can walk down the street and everyone goes, hey Matt, how you going? It's and so I'd kind of almost be sad to give that up. Often it's, I'm away and that's not great, and it can be a bit taxing, physically and mentally to do them. But I enjoy that social side of, going to all these different places, and I love visiting country towns, and the sort of people that live there. So, I hope that stays being a part of my life. I do expect that eventually I'll probably just get too old for it and somebody will come and knock me off my perch and they won't want me anymore. You never know. But yeah, I guess, I'm someone that those people know is going to go there and do the job that they need to get done and not be a knob and not get really drunk or try to root everything in sight. So yeah, I think I've got that on my side.
Well, it's absolutely amazing to catch up with you, Matt. You've had an incredible career. What do you love about what you do?
I guess there's the creative side of it, and that's what's kept me excited about it. Why 32 years later I still love doing it is that I get to be. I'm always amazed that there's always something to learn, and that I'm always able to come up with something, and it's usually based around finding a new ingredient that I haven't used before. That I love that it's a never-ending journey of learning and creativity. But I love the fact that I get to make people happy as well. That's sort of what started me with it when I was a little kid, was like being able to make food for adults and they heaping praise on me for being clever. And I still love that I can cook for people and and stay in their memory. Sometimes forever. People will say to me 20 years later, "Oh, you remember that? Dish you cooked back in blah blah blah." I'm like, "No, I don't," but I'm glad you do. That's nice that's what I'm remembered for. If there's a legacy, that's what I'd like it to be. That Matt cooked me that food that time. And so, I guess that's something that's wonderful and unique about being a chef. That's, you can actually plant yourself in someone's memory with a dish and stay there forever and hopefully be remembered fondly, unless it was really bad and they hate your guts for it.
Well, Matt, you're an absolute inspiration and can't wait to see you in that food truck driving around Queensland. Please keep in touch and we'll have to catch up again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Huck. Nice to talk to you.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.